Yo, what's up, everyone? Today, we're going to talk about Pokemon Green and the Super Game Boy, specifically the Super Game Boy 2, but I'll also talk about the Super Game Boy. So, as you've no doubt noticed, I'm using my phone to record this because this is the easiest way to get footage of like physical devices and cartridges and whatever, but like we're going to actually do some gameplay too to talk about it's like direct footage capture stuff, but so, what I want to talk about today, and I'm sure it's something that has fascinated a lot of people, specifically, do you see this expert camera movement? Can I do that? Oh, that's awesome. So, as you see here, I've got four different cartridges. They're all the like Gen 1 Pokemon games in Japan. So, I don't know how many of you have seen this kind of stuff before, but as you've no doubt noticed, there's four of them, not three of them. So, Pokemon Blue was the initial update like Pokemon Yellow was in America, but before Pokemon Yellow, as long as I have all my wording and knowledge correct. I'm not the biggest Pokemon like fan or anything. I like the games. So if I get any of this little info wrong, I am terribly sorry, but their initial versions was red and green. And as you may have noticed I'm presuming American, and I don't know how the European cartridges were. Our Pokemon Red and Blue were colored. Now, what I have right here is American Red. Let me get that in the shot. I'm not a professional camera person. So they're entirely different as far as how they physically look. And as far as my understanding is concerned, that actually, like, programming-wise, they're different too. This is more like Pokemon Blue. And I'm not saying, like, as far as what Pokemon are and stuff, but as far as how stable the coding is, there is numerous like exploits and glitches in Japanese Red and Green that do not exist in even Pokemon Blue in Japan, which is, like I said, the most like our Pokemon Red and Blue. Stuff like the what's the glitch's name? Like the select button thing. I don't know the exact terminology for it, but where you can like order stuff in your items incorrectly and like go into a battle, and then you can start selecting items that aren't like slots in your items that aren't in your inventory and get like really garbage data out of it and do like crazy glitches and stuff with that. There's a really good video series. I think it's called like bug catching, bug hunting or something, but like Pokemon Green and Red glitches or whatever. Look that up on YouTube. I loved those videos, and it goes into a lot of the more technical breakdowns of the, frankly, the spaghetti code that was Pokemon Red and Green initially. But I am one that I really like physical cartridges. I'm doing one take. This is like my third or fourth take, but I'm not going to like cut a bunch of stuff out because of the way I'm recording audio, so you're just going to have to deal with it. So I like physical cartridges. I like Japanese cartridges and stuff like that. I think they're incredibly fascinating growing up, being American and seeing what a different culture got to grow up with. And I think it's also tying back to, like, I just like older hardware a lot, and it's fascinating to see from, specifically if we're talking about Japan, how all this older hardware was just generally better supported in Japan compared to how it was in America. I think the video game market was just bigger over there. So they tend to have gotten stuff that either we never did or earlier versions of stuff, especially back before we had updates and online connectivity. Then that's how we get, stuff like Pokemon Red and Green that we don't get in America. So I want to talk about a bit of some Game Boy Color cartridges too, just to put some things into perspective. Now, I am not graced enough to have any Japanese Pokemon Game Boy Color games, but what I do have, and I just think this stuff is fascinating. I'm not going to go too long into this because I know this is like Pokemon related, but I do have this second Mega Man X game for the Game Boy Color, the Japanese version. Got a really cool tagline there, subtitle, whatever you want to call it, Soul Eraser, I think it's what it was called. I have 8 hours of Duolingo, so that didn't help whatsoever. But as you can see, it's like all clear, and so I love that kind of translucent look of these. This is something that, like, especially like mid to late 90s was happening a lot, like all those N64 bottles and stuff. And then got this American legit Pokemon Crystal. This is my brother's. Just for comparison's sake of like an American Game Boy Color cartridge and a Japanese Game Boy Color cartridge, and then obviously we already talked about Pokemon Red there. And as far as I know, Japanese Pokemon Yellow, I think that's actually pretty similar to our Pokemon Yellow, like language differences and stuff aside. As far as the actual like coding of it, I think that's pretty similar. I think as far as if we want to talk about Pokemon Green for a second before we get into actual footage of it, I believe if you want to make the most direct comparison, this is the most similar to our American Blue, but like not 100%. I just think that's the closest approximation because our American Blue isn't quite Japanese Blue either, from my understanding. And this is something I got to dig more into later. But for now, what I've been really digging into is Pokemon Green. Me and my brother have been playing through it. He is kind of a better encyclopedia than even Bubblepedia? Yeah, something like that. So with a combination of that, and this is something I would have loved as a kid, but like the Google Translate app, where you can just like scan your TV or whatever and just translate text and stuff. Like, it's a little muddied, but for stuff that I'm like genuinely confused on what's happening, like you could totally just translate some text to get your way through. And then with all like online resources and stuff now, it's really not that hard to play through something that's like not even in your language. And I still can't believe we've gotten to that point. So one last thing I want to talk about as far as physical cartridges are concerned is let's talk a little bit about the actual Super Game Boy. So for comparison, let's look at some the camera, so sorry about that. Let's look at some Super Nintendo cartridges real quick. So we have American Super Nintendo cartridge. We got Star Fox here. So I'm sure, again, like I'm pretty sure most of my demographics American. So we have these like blockier, like rectangular cartridges, obviously gray. Besides, I think Doom was red. And then the Super Famicom cartridges, and I believe the European cartridges are similar to these Super Famicom cartridges, where they're more rounded, and I'm not saying necessarily like the edges are, but overall, I feel like the design is a little more rounded and a little like, it's a little thinner. Again, I'm very sorry for my camera work here, but like a little thinner. So they look quite different, like actual different shapes compared to like if we're talking about Game Boy specifically. Now, the reason why I wanted to show you like a Super Famicom cartridge is to show you the Super Game Boy 2. So this cartridge is huge compared to, if we're going to put them side by side. There we go. That's the closest I'm like one-handing this thing with my phone and stuff, trying to stay by the mic, because I'm trying to not record with my phone's microphone. I want the audio to at least be good. Plus, I'm probably a little too zoomed in. Let's back it off a little bit. All right, so this thing's huge. And the reason for that is this is straight up just like a Game Boy. That's what kind of hardware is inside of this. It's not some sort of like coding converter to interpret code or something like that. It's literally just a Game Boy, and it's even got a link cable. Now, this is something I think the original Super Game Boy models did not have. And again, Super Game Boy 2, I mean, look at the translucent cartridge. I love this. It's a lot like, like this kind of stuff. We never got this in America. This was a Japanese-only thing. Granted, anything I'm talking about here today, if you have a Super Nintendo or I believe... Now, as far as 50 hertz, 60 hertz, if you're European, that's going to be a little more of a pain. But for anything that I'm talking about here, you can get Super Famicom to Super Nintendo converters. Like, they convert the actual pins and stuff to work on your other hardware. And the reason I know this works so well is because I got a Super Nintendo to Super Famicom converter for stuff like this, because I didn't want to, start re-getting my library when I got a Super Famicom for my CRT. But this only came out in Japan. We got the first model, and these, I think, were not necessarily made by Nintendo. I want to say these were made by, Hori, which is they've made a lot of peripherals for a lot of different consoles and stuff. But I believe this was outsourced to them. But don't take that as, a sign of quality. These things are really cool and really nice, and honestly, this is, my favorite way to play Game Boy games. I have my Super Famicom hooked up to a CRT. I just used an S-Video, the super cool official S-Video for the Super Famicom. But yeah, the one thing is, our American ones and the initial Super Game Boy 2s, they did not have the link cable support. And another thing is the clock speed was slightly wrong on them, and games ran a little slower, and as a consequence, because of how finicky the Game Boy hardware is and stuff, the slightly lower clock speed, and I believe it was lower, not higher. I could be wrong on that, but the slightly different clock speed, we'll go with that. Also affected like the audio, so the audio was slightly off, and as a consequence, because things are slightly either too slow or too fast, frame rate could be slightly different as far as how we're perceiving it and stuff. So that was half the reason I wanted a Super Famicom, was so I could get the Super Game Boy 2. And when I was first looking up the stuff, I'm like, surely when they went through the trouble of doing a revision, adjusting the clock speed and link cable support, I'm like, was this at a point where they would have had Game Boy Color support? And sadly, no. There's still, not an official way that I can think of to play a Game Boy Color game on a CRT. Without using the GameCube, but that, I feel, is better hooked up with an HDMI on, like, a flat screen and stuff. And I wish this could have played Game Boy Color games, but that's not really what this video is about. As far as Pokemon is concerned, you can still play up to Gold and Silver. Now, off the top of my head, I could have sworn there was something weird, like maybe the Japanese version of Crystal was Game Boy supported, and the American and other languages were Game Boy Color only because it needed better hardware for like different language support. But I could be wrong about that. I may be thinking of like Gold and Silver in French or something. I know I'm probably getting different trivia mixed up, but you can at least for sure play like Gen 1 stuff in Gold and Silver if you get yourself a Super Game Boy or a Super Game Boy 2. So I know that was probably a bit of a mess and a bit of a ramble, but I love hardware. One of my favorite things is playing portable hardware on a TV. So this is something that has endlessly fascinated me, and I wanted to go through the hardware and show specific stuff as far as what I have and what we're going to be talking about. But with that being said, now we're going to get into actual footage territory. Alright, so we're going to start up with that Super Game Boy 2 boot, straight into the special border for Pokemon Green. Now, this is one of the first things we're going to look at, is the intro to the game. Now, I don't think this is any different than, like, the American Red and Blue intro, but it's still something cool to see, and I think they replaced Gengar with Pikachu or something in yellow. I don't honestly remember, but so we got the title screen, we got Pokemon Green, I'm presuming, in Japanese, where I think it's Midori or something for green. I have, once again, minimal Duolingo experience, but you get the pocket monsters on the bottom, green on the top of the border, and these Pokemon games all had special borders for the Super Game Boy. Obviously the Super Game Boy 2 as well, it's like the same thing. And I think the Pokemon and the little cards or whatever in the corners are different for each of the games, but I'm not entirely sure off the top of my hand. Pokemon Green's the one that we've been mostly playing recently. So, as you see, it actually has like color and stuff to it, and I believe this was later on to the point where Super Game Boy is already out. Of course it is, because they have special borders, but where they're able to pick out some colors for some things, but I think it's still limited to like 4 shades of certain stuff, and then they gotta like work around certain limitations with how the Game Boy is shading things anyways, and I think it's capable of more, but more so, I think Nintendo didn't want people to use too many colors for too many things, and maybe, I don't know if their thought process was make the Game Boy look bad in comparison to the Super Game Boy stuff. I'm not exactly sure, and I'm not trying to like spread rumors or anything like that, but I know it's capable of more. It's just rarely ever utilized. But for being a non-color Game Boy game, I think the amount of color they got away with in these older Pokemon games are quite effective, and like the Pokemon look like color-wise how they're supposed to look and stuff for the most part. And again, like, we're adding color to something that inherently doesn't have color. I think this is super cool. And with people emulating and stuff nowadays, I know big, bad, scary word, but I think a lot of the times people probably aren't seeing the Super Game Boy borders and stuff, and I think they're really cool, and especially when you're playing this like on a CRT, it looks very perfect and very good for Game Boy games. So what I thought would be fun, because I know Pokemon Green is such an enigma to a lot of people, is what we're going to do, since this cartridge, like, you know, it isn't like new or something like that. It's obviously from 95 or something. This has somebody's save file on it. I don't know if it was like a kid or maybe some adult bought it later on and was playing for a bit or whatever. But if we go into this, we actually have a save file already on here. And believe it or not, I haven't like messed with the battery or anything. This is just actually still working. So either somebody replaced the battery at some point, or somehow this battery is still trucking. But I don't know. I kind of doubt that. But and I know this is always fun. I know people do this kind of stuff where they either get the old Pokemon games or like PS1 and PS2 memory cards and stuff, and they look through like what people were doing and stuff. So it looks like we're 5 hours in, and again, Japanese is not my strong suit. I want to say they have one badge. That is my guess, because I am also not a Pokemon expert either. So I'm going to say they have one badge. They've been playing for about 5 hours. I tested this for a second. So unfortunately, I already know that they're in a cave. They're already doing some cave stuff here. But what I think would be fun, we're going to get into some battles here in a second, just so you can see a bit of Pokemon Green action. We could talk about Pokemon Green for a bit. Do you like Pikachu in the upper right corner there? I love that old artwork of him. And it's like so limited. All you get is like his soulless white eyes and then a cute little smile underneath. I love it. So if we go into the Pokemon here, believe it, yeah, see, check it out. I got that. Clearly my man needs to heal his Pokemon. Just slightly. That would drive me insane, honestly. I don't know why. Just a little bit off. But I already spoiled the fun a bit for me just to make sure this works. But we see that he went through the trouble of getting a Gyarados. But see what I mean, like color palette wise, that looks pretty like legit. Like I feel like if someone didn't know that this game didn't inherently have color, I would feel like they would think this is like naturally in there. So he's got a couple moves. He was clearly using the top move a lot. Now, I am not the encyclopedia on Pokemon, so unfortunately, I cannot tell you what this move is off the top of my head. And with the way I'm recording this, I can't like translate it on the fly for you. And yeah, like my Japanese is very incredibly limited. I learned very, very basics. I might be able to know how to ask for a cup of water, but I certainly can't tell you what that top move is. However, like I said, if you're playing this on your own, you get Google Translate using the wiki and stuff, you'll be totally fine, especially if you actually have more experience with Red and Blue. Unlike me, I'm not super experienced with these. So what else we got? Oh, we got a Charmeleon, I believe that is. So I can't remember if I said this specifically, but so a lot of the sprites in Japanese Red and Green were different than what we end up seeing in Japanese Blue and then American Red and Blue. A lot of them are a lot rougher. Some of the proportions are super weird. What I want you guys to do, one of my favorite ones that I've seen so far, go on whatever, maybe Bulbapedia has it, I'm not sure, but go find like the Pokemon Green sprite of Bellsprout. Bellsprout ain't looking too good. But we got a Charmeleon there. Again, no moves, but maybe a Charmeleon with no Ember or something by now. I think that's a thing. Maybe Scratch or somewhere in there if they didn't delete it. We got a bird going on. What do we got here? Oh, that's not a Pidgey. That's a something else. That's a bird. Can you guys believe it? Okay, so that's a bird. I don't know what bird that is. But again, like, see, we even got like different shades of colors going on there, and it does actually, to me at least, that looks like natural. That looks like something that would originally be in there. And this might be a Chansey or something like that. What do we got? Oh, that's a Pikachu. Oh, we got a Pikachu. Okay, yeah. Oh, look at him go. I love that sprite. He's got stubby little arms. So we got a Pikachu. And yeah, in Red and Green, I think Pikachus are a lot easier to get. And it's not like in Yellow where you just start with one and you can't just like get another one or something like that, at least easily from my knowledge. I think Pikachus are somewhat easy to get in this. I don't exactly remember, but I also, if I'm remembering right, I don't think he's that great of an electric Pokemon in this, although I'm not the expert. So we got, and they're wildly different levels, so he's not like, not going to the point where as soon as somebody's like level 23, then he's ditching him and leveling up the other ones till they're 23 or whatever. Everybody plays differently though, so that's totally fine. And this literally might be like a kid or something. I don't know. So obviously a lot. Man, I should have done this. I should have translated like this person's name or something. Because that's probably this. Yeah, I don't know if this is like a legit name or... See, the other thing, maybe this was somebody that bought Pokemon Green from Japan but was English-speaking and then just named him something to put it there, and they're just fumbling their way through the game. This is like save, which is clearly working. So, as you see, like the dungeons and stuff, they have their own color and stuff going on, which is, again, really cool. So let's take a look at a Zubat. Here's something fun. So I don't think this is the case for later stuff, but I noticed this when me and my brother were playing through green. So we have a Mew because we did that like Mew glitch or whatever, just to have one. Like, I'm not trying to break the game or whatever. And obviously Mew starts with transform. So with the way color palettes work and stuff, one of the things I did was I just wanted to see what happened. I transformed as one of these Zubats here, and because of the way color palettes are working, it turned into like a flesh-colored Zubat because it's using the Mew color palette, which is egregious and hard to look at. No, it's just a limitation that makes some sort of cool results. And so, like, if you found like a wild Pikachu, which I think there's wild Pikachus, maybe, I'm not sure, or at least like a trainer battle, you can see like a pink flesh-colored Pikachu if you really want to do that. So, is this some sort of water move? What do we got here? Oh, whatever it was didn't work. What do we got here? What does he got? Oh, that also did something. Okay. What's this? What does he got here? What moves? What moves does this thing have? Okay, this thing's useless to me right now. Especially because I can't translate these moves and I'm not an encyclopedia on Pokemon. Well, what was level 23 here? What do we got? I've already forgot. We had a Charmeleon. Yeah, oh, look at that back sprite. Oh, that's really messed up. So this has got to be... Has he been reordering his moves? What do we got here? Oh, whatever that was good. Oh, heck yeah. Heck yeah. Okay. So, something else you can do with these, specifically red and green, there is a very big oversight when it comes to selecting your items in your bag if you're like out in the overworld. And if you start rearranging things, I should have swapped this Gyarados out. This Gyarados ain't doing me. I keep mixing up bag with Pokemon, but if you start like swapping your items around or something in the overworld, but then back out of it in a certain way, you can access slots of your items that you don't have in battle, and then you can start essentially trying to use garbage data as an item, and you can get some really messed up results into that. I think it's like item swap. I don't exactly remember what people call the glitch, but 100% look into that because it is game breaking. When I first got the Super Game Boy, my one friend, he happened to have a Japanese copy of Red. I'm like, I at least want to try that for a bit. The battery was dead, so I knew it wasn't going to save or anything, but I wanted to try out the Super Game Boy for a bit until I got some Game Boy games on hand and stuff that were like Japanese Game Boy games and whatnot. But I believe Super Game Boy, not I believe, I know it is, it's like region free, so it doesn't matter what you're popping in here. So it didn't save or anything, so I knew it didn't really matter if I messed something up. But so me and my brother just played through as much of it as we could in one sitting without saving it or whatever. I did like the item swap stuff at the very end and then got into a battle, and because of whatever amounts I picked, each way you do the item swap with how many, like, not tiles, but how many slots you go down and stuff, they all have different effects, and some of it's really crazy. And whatever I did, like, as soon as I went to use the item in battle, it just, like, crashed the whole game. But you can, if you want, crash the whole game like that, along with numerous, like, literally numerous other things. There's so much wrong with the spaghetti code in Pokemon Red and Green. So I think, let's see, we talked about the color, we talked about, you see, yeah, some of these Pokemon, not some of them, I'm pretty sure they're, like, all entirely different sprite-wise and stuff. And some of the text, I think, is, like, faster, too, just because of the nature of reading through Japanese and stuff like that. So, I don't know if you're speedrunning, maybe this is something you want to do. But I think that pretty much goes through all, like, the cool little Super Game Boy difference and stuff. Something you can do, you can swap color palettes on the fly like this. Now, this other one is, like, a generic one meant for, like, any Game Boy game that doesn't have color data. But if you want, you could also pull up this menu. You can make your own borders and stuff. Like, for Pokemon, I don't know why you'd want to do this, because you already, you have a good border, and I don't think you can actually draw on the screen, can you? I don't think so. No, you can't draw on the screen or anything, the actual gameplay, but you can make your own borders if you want. Let's see. What I want to do is get out of here now that I made this atrocious border. Yeah, check that out. So, I made my own border, but what we can do, and this is cool for any game that isn't Pokemon that has a preset color palette, but what we can do is start making our own color palettes. So let's see, what is... I know I've used this tool before. So if we have pink, how do I... Oh, wait, okay, let me select this. Yeah, see So we can start adjusting color palettes. And yeah, for a game like this that has predetermined color palettes already, that like Game Freak themselves wanted, there's no reason to be doing this. But for games that either have like that look atrocious with the default color palette and stuff, that you can start customizing it and really making it look kind of natural. And then yeah, if you want to play if you want to play Pokemon Green like this, you totally can. Not only can I barely read Japanese to begin with, but now look at this super yellow charm. This is like, my god, I've just invented a creepypasta, haven't I? Yeah, look at this. We have truly come full circle. And with that, I think I've talked enough about Pokemon Green and the Super Game Boy. So with that being said, not a super long video. I just wanted to like poke around with this for a bit, have some fun, talk about some Super Game Boy and Pokemon Green for a second. This isn't going to be like an all-encompassing video on Pokemon Green. Maybe at some point, but I'm not the Pokemon expert. I like hardware a lot though, and I wanted to talk about hardware, and I like things that never left Japan technically, being like Pokemon Green. So this is, oh my god, look at this cave. All right, there's so much fun we could have with this, but we're gonna end it there. All right, thanks for watching.